and gentlemen, boys and girls, basketball fans of all ages, welcome to the ultimate North Dakota Hoops Showdown. Tonight we're going to meet the starting lineup. First, as a forward, she's a three-time national champion, a Bison Athletic Hall of Famer, and one of the best ballers in the state. She's 1990s Miss Basketball, hailing from Milnor High School. It's Lynette Mund Johnson. At center, she dominated at Fargo-Shanley, was a 1997 Miss Basketball, became a legend at Iowa State, and took her talents to the WNBA to play with the Cleveland Rockers. A true Hall of Famer. Give it up for Angie Welly Ettinger. And at a guard, North Dakota's first Mr. Basketball, a Minot State Hall of Famer, a state champion winning basketball coach with Bishop Ryan, and an all-around force to be reckoned with. Straight out of Newburgh High School, it's Chris Lamore. And leading the way from the sidelines, the man with more than 800 career victories, the winningest coach in North Dakota basketball history, and three-time Class B champion coach. Put your hands together for Coach Dan Carr. And officiating tonight is a Hall of Famer in his own right, a North Dakota broadcasting icon, Lee Timmerman. All right, this is North Dakota basketball at its finest, so let's talk hoops.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thanks for organizing this and putting it together. She did say I was the official tonight, so I didn't know if any of the players and coaches were going to give me high fives or not, but I guess they did, so how soon they forget. But again, thanks for coming. It's always fun to talk basketball, and obviously, you know, in this time of the year and in this part of the world, basketball means quite a bit. And the theme tonight, it's called Beyond the Court, Basketball Bonds North Dakota Communities. And I see a lot of faces, heads going up and down. It certainly does. And let's just start there, panel. Think back, and we'll have Lynette go first, and talk just a little bit about what Milnor was like back in the late 80s, early 90s, when you guys were making your run.
Well, yeah, 1989 was the first year that we made it to state, and we kind of knew as young kids that we had an opportunity if we all stuck together and all played that we could make it to state. And I remember being at the Valley City Bubble, and the whole side was full of Milnor people, and we beat the Page Panthers to go to the state championship. And the whole crowd came onto the court, and people were crying. My grandma Lucy was there, and she was crying, excited, and it was an amazing experience. And then we drove home, and there was a Ellison's Corner is where everybody met. And there was just a line of people, and the fire trucks were there, and they brought us into town. And the whole week was, you know, Milnor girls basketball. And Springer's Barbershop had a sign. The Dan's Super Value had the signs in it. Everybody, when we left town, the fire trucks were there. They rode us out of town, and it was 2 great years of those type of experiences. And even to this day, people will come and say, that was just the greatest time. We just had so much fun with you guys, and you girls gave us so much joy. So those are some of the quick memories that I can think of back to 89 and 90.
I know that we have the 3 classes now, but Class A and Class B were probably, I don't know if they were dramatically different, but they certainly were different, I think, in terms of the tournaments and how you qualified for them. And I guess the same thing for you, Angie, because with the Shanley Deacons and the back-to-back state champions, I don't know if it was more of a Class B feel because you guys were a little bit smaller of a high school, but what was the same school community feel for you guys when you were winning championships in the 90s?
I should first clarify, this is not from American Eagle. This is the year I graduated. So it wasn't my husband's football jersey. It was just 98, 98. So to clear that air. No, I agree, Lee. I think, being from Shanley, and they still do. We fought to play in that top division. So we battled the Souths and the Mandans and Fargo North, West Fargo's at the time. And in '89, Shanley had kind of put their name on the map, and they'd won the state championship with Craig Murray. He was a big 6'10" coach, and they'd won the championship. And I think that's kind of when basketball was going to take off for Shanley. I think what really helped us on the women's side is that back then, I think, and Lynette too, we played in the fall. And so when we played in the fall sport, everybody just came out to our games. Like, they were there for Saturdays and Tuesdays and Thursdays, and the student section was packed because we weren't competing necessarily with the boys at the same time. But like Lynette said, we had a really good cluster of people that came through, and I think that's what you need. We had Sarah Jacobson, and we had good kids above us. Our group was strong. When you have a 6'3" person who can, make left-hand layups in the paint for 4 years, that helps too. But we just came out. I remember in the state championship, they came to Minot, and we battled Mandan. And I apologize. I know this is the west side of the state now, but we battled Greg Amundsen for years and years and years. I remember one time we actually played in a travel team all the way. We took our team all the way to Colorado, the whole Shanley team, and we played Mandan in the championship, and we were in Denver. And I'm like, how does this happen? Like, we cannot get away from Greg Amundsen and their powerhouse. But I remember winning it in Minot, and you just didn't think it was going to get any better than that. I remember our parents had red and white gloves on, and, Shanley shut down. And then to win back-to-back, our boys are really good at the same time, too. So it's funny how it slips your mind 25, 30 years ago, and then when you have to talk about it in a museum, it all kind of comes right back to you. And so it was quite nostalgic, and you remember those feelings quite well.
Well, Angie mentioned Greg Amundsen and those Mandan teams. I was looking through, I brought some scorebooks, but I was looking through some scorebooks, and I apologize, Lynette. I could only find back to 1990, or 91. I only found back to 91, so I'm so sorry. I feel so bad because I thought I had them, but I didn't. But anyway, those Mandan teams, back then, we remember that they had obviously a great run, but Mandan played in the championship game 12 times in 13 years, and they won 9 of them. They would have won 11.
Yeah,
if it wasn't for her, they would have won 11. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But let's continue with the theme a little bit and go back to Class B and bring in Chris and talk about the impact that your team had for Newburgh back in the mid-'80s.
Well, it probably goes back a lot further than that, because everybody knows the legendary coach that's sitting next to me, but there's another one, is Bob Hunsker, Coach Hunsker, Silver Fox. And he started I think in the 50s. He coached my dad in the 60s. And we always had a good team. We were first or second in the districts, would make regional tournaments. There's maybe 1 year out of every 10 years that Newburgh didn't make the regional tournament. And it was a tough year in Newburgh when that happened. And that's what I grew up with. And so our goal was to make the state tournament. And in 1983, I was a sophomore on the team, and we got beat on a half-line shot by Surrey to go to the state tournament. That was really heartbreaking. We also had the Singing Eagles, so that year we got to go and sing. And everybody catcalled us on the way out, saying that's the only way you're going to get to the state tournament. And I said, no, that's not going to happen. So 84, we finally broke through the ice, and there's a lot of pent-up energy. Our following that we had was incredible. We had people from all over the state who were graduates from Newburgh come to Bismarck here and participate in the state tournament. It was aunts, uncles, everybody. And then we were in the state championship again in 85 and 86. So 3 years in a row for a small school. Our high school was 42 kids in high school. And in 89, we were back there again. So we were in the state tournament from 84 to 89 and all 4 years in the championship game. So very proud of that. But the enthusiasm We felt it from every corner of the state. It wasn't just little Newburgh, which has 115 people living there still to this day. So it was all energy from all over the state, and it was incredible, incredible.
Well, to bring a little different perspective on it, let's bring in a coach now. And I don't know how many of you may know the dynamic between these two people. Quite a few of them do, but Dan's Lions won in 84, 85, and in 2009, right? And who did you play in, Chris, you might remember this. Guess who they played in the championship game in 84 and 85? A team from Newburgh with this kid from Lemoore, a kid called Lemoore that Dan was trying to slow down and stop. But before we get into just some of that, Dan, just your thoughts on what the Linton community has been in your 44 years or something like that as a head coach, something like that. But he's seen it all. Good teams, teams that might not have been as good as you wanted them to be. But what was the community of Linton and is the community of Linton like in terms of basketball from your perspective?
Well, the reason that I ended up in Linton in the first place, I was born in Minot, actually. I'm from North Dakota. A lot of people don't know that, but I was born in North Dakota. My dad, Trent, was in the civil service for the Air Force, and we ended up in central Minnesota, and that's where I grew up most of my years. But I did end up going to Mayville State for a couple of years. After I went a couple of years in Minnesota, I was in the Army a couple of years. But I always thought I had to go back and coach in Minnesota, and so I did. And I coached there for 3 years. Wasn't really happy with my experience, so I figured I was going to give it one more shot, and then I was going to get out and make some money if I didn't like it. So I did. I went and I asked a buddy of mine. Well, first of all, my brother was coaching in Talna. Talna is the reason I'm here. They were playing their rival, Lakota, and it was a snowstorm. And nobody should have been out that night. The gym was packed, and they were hanging from the rafters. And at the end of that game, a kid by the name of Schneider hit a half-court shot and wins the game for Talna. And I'm sure it was after the buzzer, but the referees, they're going home.
The refs never get it right.
If you would have been wearing stripes, yeah. So I just after that experience, I got to have this. This is what I want to do. So I asked a buddy of mine where a good place to go. And he said, Linton's got a job open. He said, so we went there, and the town was very sports minded. Absolutely, love their sports, and I think the difference between Class B and Class A. Class A, they play great basketball. Their fans are enthusiastic. They're great. If you watch them, they get after it. But there is a difference between Class B and Class A. Now, Class B is the fact that the town, Class A, I think they got their fans and their base, their school, but the Class B is the town. It's the community. They are immersed in it. Friday night, they're at the gym. And they absolutely support each other and those kids. And I don't know, it lived up to everything I wanted it to do, to live up to. It was great. And the sport in the small town is, last guy to leave the town, shut off the lights when you go to the state tournament. And it was, I think one thing about a Class B school, you start the season, you think you're going to the state tournament. No, it's hard. It was hard to get there. I think when I first started coaching, we had 210 or 220 schools in Class B. It was not easy to get there. But when you got there, it was special. And that made it special. You know, there are schools in North Dakota that have never made it. And just as Chris alluded to, it was tough to get there. You could be good. By the way, I was born in 52. Bob started coaching in 54. He was, actually, I was born not too far from where Bob grew up, but he's a great man. He is a great man. I suppose I should stop, huh?
But you did say something I think was interesting, and we'll have Lynette kind of comment on this because she's seeing it now from the big school side. If you don't know, Lynette's an assistant principal at BHS, and so she's around a lot of the games and sporting events. Talk a little bit about what Dan was speaking about, what you as an athlete got to enjoy in Milnor now that you are working at one of the big schools. When the Demons go to a state tournament, what's that dynamic like versus kind of what Dan was talking about and what you've experienced?
Well, I'm very fortunate to work at Bismarck High School, one of the oldest schools in the state, and has a really good tradition. But typically, like last weekend, the state was in Fargo. Family will go and parents, and we had a good student section that went, but it's not the whole city of Bismarck, of course. And you know, there's so many things going on that they've got, you know, swimming and wrestling and hockey and so many different sports that you know, the teams go to state, and they went last year and they went the year before. It's just kind of it's maybe bad if you don't go to state, if you don't make it to state. Whereas in Class B, if you make it, like, you're a legend forever in your town. You know, people remember you forever. So that's, I think, probably the difference, and that's what I see at the high school level. Again, I'm a very proud Bismarck Demon right now. I think they've got a lot of tradition, and they go back to 1873, I think. But it is a different feel because it is the whole town. I think we had 75 kids in my high school. Milnor is 700 people. So it's just you know, there's 1,300 kids in my school right now. So it's different, but I think it's you remember, like, people remember when you went to state in 1989, remember in 1990. My sisters, Milnor went to state in 94, 93, my mom and dad are here, by the way. They remember. Don't remember my birthday, but they remember. No, they do. They went 93, 94, 95 as well. So those the memories of that group of people, like I said, even today, you walk into anywhere in town, they like, oh yeah, how's it going? And they remember you. So.
Well, let's dig into a few memories and talk a little bit about the dynamic that these two guys have. And this might be a better question for Dennis. I don't know if Dennis Beck was right there, played for Dan and those teams, I believe. But the memories are etched in there forever. And we're talking about something between these two gentlemen that is now 40 years old. But yet, when you think about it, you're 18 again, probably. And you're a young coach trying to win a state championship, but talk just a little bit about what the dynamic of those 2 years was like, and the fact that your goal of winning a state championship, you know, you got there twice, it didn't happen, Dan's team beat you twice. What was that like? So just go ahead and delve up some good and or bad memories, however you guys view it.
Well, number one, I'm a little intimidated right now. I don't have any of my teammates here. I see about, is there two of you from Linton? Coach Dan Carr's disciples are out there, and yeah, they were rough. They were rough, those guys. So my junior year, they were a much more physical team than we were. We were more finesse, and it showed. And the one thing that we did have that we always, I think in Newburgh, always hard workers. Nobody out-hustled us. Nobody outworked us. When we ran into Linton in '84 in the state championship game, they were working as hard, if not harder than we were. So we knew we had to step it up another notch. We ran into a team that we had never faced before. They were coached very well, and you could see it because it all starts with the coach. The coach has to have that understanding that, it starts with hard work, and the kids have to recognize what that hard work means and and then you have to have the players that buy into it. And then you have the community that has to praise the kids when they're working hard, because then it continues and it fosters, and you can't be empathetic about it, because if you are, then you're going to lose that. And Lynn was one of those schools that we played against that, we went home after that with beaten up, bruised. One of our best players broke his ankle right before halftime. We still would have lost the game, I think, but it made it a little less competitive. I think it was a 19-point game at the end. So we worked really hard that summer and came back the next year. And a lot of good teams that next year in the state tournament, just like the prior year, a lot of undefeated teams, and didn't know who we were going to face in the other bracket. Weren't expecting to face Linton as much. They had a couple of good players, but they lost a lot of their senior leadership, and they weren't as physical. And so I think we had Linton down most of the game, but at the end of regulation, they came back and tied it up on a last-second shot, I think it was. And then in overtime, we got beat on a last-second shot. So we had our opportunities. It was just, I said 75% of basketball is pure luck. The other 25% is endurance, is what I told the kids when we coached and when I coached them at Bishop Ryan. And have all the respect in the world for the coach to the left of me. Interestingly enough, after we lost my senior year, Lions All-Star game, he was my coach for 2 weeks. So I learned, it's amazing how much I learned in that 2 weeks, not to say that I was so fortunate growing up in Newburgh, North Dakota, because we had some fantastic coaches, and it wasn't just Coach Hunsker. Forsberg was the coach, my middle school coach. He was a very good coach in Botno. And he taught us, a lot of things about rebounding, for example. Then we moved up, and JV team, we had Raleigh Hochstetler was my coach. He just graduated from Valley City, and he picked Newburgh for some reason as to where he wanted to start his education and teaching and coaching career. And he was more of a hands-on. He'd play one-on-one with us after practice every day, and up to 10. And we didn't beat him for a year. It was the next year we started beating him. But he comes from that lineage at the Hochstetlers out of Wolford, and fast, handle the ball, great shooters, and he taught us a lot too. And then Dave Cressup, who just went in the Hall of Fame in Minnesota, coaching Hall of Fame, he coached at Upham. And we'd play basketball every Wednesday night, every Sunday night, open gym, and those two would play, and we'd have to play against them and guard them and learn a lot. So a little town in Newburgh in north central North Dakota had fantastic coaches when I grew up in the 80s. So this guy, I have all the respect in the world for him, Coach Carr, and like I said, those 2 weeks that I spent with him, he didn't like it when we went to Detroit Lakes, though, but it was a pleasure to be a player for him.
All right, Dan. Follow up.
We went to Detroit Lakes.
Detroit Lakes, yeah. You and Coach Hunsker, I'm not sure if you came with.
Oh, really? Well, that's right. Yeah, might have something to do with it.
And I won't. You didn't have to worry about me. It might have been Lester Pintar that you had to worry about.
But we'll have a drink afterwards.
Okay, yeah. There. But jump back into the mid-'80s and talk just a little bit about what it was like to go against a team that had a player of Chris's caliber who, went on to Minot State and was a 3-year starter and in their Hall of Fame and all that type of stuff. I would assume was part of the focal point?
Definitely. It was amazing, the player that Chris was, but they had a lot of good players in Newburgh, a little school. Unbelievable how many good players they had, and they were quick. That wasn't our forte, was it, boys?
What's he saying, Dennis?
just as a little side note, I'll come back. When I first went to Linton, I walked in to teach my U.S. history class, and those two birds, and they're Tom Dice and Wayne John, or Wayne Nelson, those boys were sitting in there, and they just had big smiles on their faces. Not because they were so excited to learn about history, but I was the basketball coach. I had to smile back, tell you what. Okay, so getting back to Newburgh, I mean, it's just amazing the athletes that they put on the floor for several years. It wasn't just 1 year. And Chris was their leader, obviously, and he was so quick. He was a handful, a challenge. I think when we played in the state tournament in '84, there were at least 3 undefeated teams, maybe 4. It might have been 5. There were just like maybe 2 or 3 losses between the whole field. I mean, it was a tough field. And we had a tremendous year that year. We played in the St. Mary's Holiday Tournament. In the St. Mary's Holiday Tournament, usually it was 4 A's and 4 B's, and they matched us up. I don't know why in the first round we played center. And we barely beat them. I think they missed there was a technical foul at the end of the game, I guess, but they missed a couple free throws, and then they rimmed one out at the end of the game. And if we would have lost that game, I don't know what our season would have been like, but we won that game. So sometimes you have to be good, but you have to be good, but you got to be lucky sometimes, just to get through. So next night we played Mandan, we beat them, and then we played St. Mary's in the championship, and we beat them. So we beat those 2 Class A teams. So we had a quality team, but there were undefeated teams in our state tournament. There were, like you said, probably 5. There were a lot of them, and just very, very good teams. And so I don't know. I think if that one game, if we would have not won that game, if things would have changed. But anyway, so a little luck in there too. When we played these guys, we had to beat Hillsborough, who was undefeated in the semifinals. This was in '84 now. I've been asked to speak at coaches' conventions a lot of time. I really don't like to talk at them. I don't like to talk in the first place, but I really don't like to talk at coaches' conventions because this is why. So I was a young coach, just starting out, and I wanted to learn about a half-court trap. So I opened up a coach's clinic. Ed Beyer, half-court trap. This is how you do it. And he was, at that time, considered, between him and Bob, 2 best coaches in the state. I figured, well, if it's good enough for Eddie, it's good enough for me. And when I started coaching, I always wanted to be the Eddie Beyer of the South. But anyway, you passed him, by the way. So we got real good at that half-court trap. And we were behind Hillsborough in the semifinals. They were ranked 1, like we were 2. And, in those days, they didn't seed you. You just ended up with whoever. So this was the semis. And so we were playing Hillsborough, got in a tight spot, second, fourth quarter. We went to our half-court trap, and it was very successful for us. Best coach in the state taught it to us. So anyway, we won because of that half-court trap. And I've never been real wild about going to coaches' conventions and telling people what we do, just because I learned that lesson young that you should maybe keep some things to yourself. Anyway, we ended up playing these guys, the Eagles, in the championship game, and they were, it wasn't just, like he said, people from Newburgh. It was anybody that would maybe pass within 50 miles of Newburgh was at state tournament cheering for Newburgh. And we had a nice crowd there. It was a great atmosphere. And it was we had to control the tempo or else we weren't going to win. So it was a battle, and we had to come out on top. So the next year we played them again in the championship. Now we had lost 4 starters. John Richter was our best player in 85. End of the first game, he sprains his ankle. So now we were kind of in a hurt bag a little bit, but we picked it up a little bit, and we told everybody they had to play a little harder, and so we're able to. I always hated the three-point shot when it first came in, but we hit a three-pointer at the buzzer against these guys and sent it into overtime. A little sophomore hit it, Bobby Petrick, and then in the overtime, we ran an out-of-bounds play, and he hit one right at the buzzer again. So it was that. I mean, these guys were a great team. I don't play them 10 times. We probably wouldn't have beat them, at all. Maybe, I don't know. They were good, but we were fortunate enough to win the game, and rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, fun stuff. I see memories from 40 years ago, still so vivid, and the details. That's what I think I like about it. But I was just doing a little Google stalking of the panel up here, and there's things that you know about these athletes. Obviously, like in Angie's case, she's was so good at Shanley, so good at Iowa State, and all this stuff. But the one thing that I didn't know that surprised me was that. No, not that. That you lettered 4 years in tennis.
And I made the state tournament.
And she made the state tournament. And I bring that up because in today's specialty world, how does being a good volleyball player, a good tennis player, a good softball player, whatever in the summer, how does that help you in the sport that you became known for?
Well, I feel like I can kind of lump myself into the Class B realm. Who knew I was like the big school, being from Shanley now? But I do see that being, whether it's Shanley or Milnor, like when you are in a small school like that, you can do everything. One of my colleagues is from Flasher, and he's like, well, I was torn because I wanted to be in the pep band, but I also wanted to be on the basketball court, right? And maybe in Flasher you could do that. I don't know, like maybe you do go warm up and stuff. So I just think in small schools, it's so important to do a lot of things. And so for me, I feel fortunate almost that I didn't get the AAU burnout and the travel team stuff. Like when I was in basketball, I did basketball, and then I was done. And then I went to volleyball, and then I did volleyball, and then I was done. And then I did tennis, right? It helped me just not get so exhausted from one sport. I don't know how fundamental my tennis skills were, but I was killer in doubles in the front row. So they would try to lob it over me, and I just like smashed it. But I do think it's important just to really, really be involved. And it seems like in today's world, if you're a hockey player from January to December. And if you're a basketball player, they want you all the time. So I just think you're fortunate in smaller schools where you might be in the play and sports and do drama, whatever it is that you want to do.
Yeah, I don't, these guys won't ever brag, I don't know if they ever will, but brag about themselves. But just to follow up on a few things that some of you may or may not know, but Angie's the Hall of Fame class at Iowa State 2017, I think, something like that. She went in the Hall of Fame.
Little, so I think so. Yeah.
Her jersey's retired at Iowa State, so I don't think anybody wears number 32 anymore. Just to give you a hint that not only were these players and these athletes tremendous in high school, they were tremendous in college as well, because I still think you're the Cyclones' all-time leader in scoring, rebounding, block shots, free throws made, and free throws attempted, and was an All-American from 9 different outlets. And that's just college. So
Not assists. You will never find me.
No, that wasn't your job. That wasn't your job.
Think before you throw it in.
Yes.
Not coming out.
If you'd have passed it out, they'd have got mad at you, right?
Yeah, I'll get more rebounds before I get an assist.
Yes.
It's fine.
And so, so she has all that on her bragging board, and the young lady to her right has 3 national championships in college on her bragging board. Lynette, talk just a little bit about making such, I would assume, dramatic jump from Class B girls and then playing on those awesome teams led by Amy and being a part of those national championships. What was the Class B to NDSU transition like?
Was the BSA still all bleachers at that point?
I think it was, yeah.
That screams Class B.
Yeah.
My journey to NDSU actually started probably when I was 10 or 11 years old. Pat Smykowski, many of you know who she is, the first ever Miss Basketball in North Dakota, lived about 5 or 6 miles as a crow flies from where I grew up. And she was my hero. And I remember I think it was 6th grade, it was a Saturday game, and the 5th and 6th grade girls played, and the 7th and 8th grade, and then the high school played. And I was so excited. So I was going to finally get to see Pat Smykowski play in live person. And so we had our game, and I was in the locker room changing afterwards, and I had these awesome glasses on, and put my glasses on the bench, and I'm getting ready, and I sat down, and I broke my glasses in half. And I'm like, how am I going to watch Pat play? So I sat on the stage the whole game holding my glasses together so that I could see Pat Smykowski play. And I remember hearing, we grew up on a dairy farm, and I was out in the milk barn, and we had an AM radio, and I don't know, probably KFYR, came on and said Pat Smykowski was the first ever Miss Basketball. And she's going to NDSU, and I'm like, well, that's what I want to do. And watching her go to that level, we have Nadine Schmidt, who maybe you remember her brother Danny is here, and his wife Michelle. She was another person that I looked up to. I think she had 41 points in the state championship game, almost single-handed. I remember watching it. I was babysitting, and I'm like, shh, kids, I got to watch this. Do whatever you want. And so I got to play with Nadine. I remember the first, Miss Basketball, all these things, and I go to NDSU, and the very first day we had school, we also had scrimmage. And I get out there, and I going down the court, I'm going up for a shot, and before I knew it, Nadine had stolen the ball and shot a layup on the other end, and I'm like, oh crap, I better get better. But it was so awesome because I grew up 70 miles from Fargo, and a lot of Bison fans were from Milnor, and I can't, you talk about community, I can't tell you how many people from Milnor would come to the games, and meant the world to me. And there was this couple, Clayton and Virginia Holmrist. They would get there when the doors open, and there was in the BSA, there was a general admission section all the way around the top, and they sat in the same spot every time. I'd go say hi, when I got done playing, the ticket lady at the NDSU said, oh, we're sure going to miss you and all of Milnor, because they would just come to the games, and I can't, like I said, I can't say enough about the support that I got from my community, and even the other players are like, oh, Milnor's here, and they'd wave to them and got to know them as well. But it was one of the joys of my life to be able to transition to NDSU and play there, and remain good friends with many of the players, and Coach Ruley, just saw her a few weeks ago. So it was a big jump, but it was awesome because it felt like home right away.
Well, Lynette just mentioned Pat being the first Miss Basketball. There wasn't that award until 1985, and I think it's really interesting that Chris is here. Chris and Juno Pintar tied for the voting that year, and so they were co-Mr. Basketballs, and that's the first time that award was presented. So I believe, if I get the years wrong, but 1990 Miss Basketball, 97 Miss Basketball, and 1985 Mr. Basketball. What did you think at the time, Chris, when you got something that never existed before as an award? And it's a big deal. It grew to be a big deal, but it started with you, and you were a big part of that. What was, just reflect on that a bit.
Honestly, I didn't know it existed until the night before, after the semifinal game, night before the championship game. And my dad knocks on the door, and I think it was Matt Kursewski was the sports writer in mine.
Why not? Yeah.
He must have told Dad, and Dad couldn't keep it a secret. So he knocked on the door and told me the night before, and I go, what are you talking about? I don't even know what that is. And I didn't know the word existed at that time. And so I had my roommates were asking me what's going on. And I'm like, I didn't want to tell them. We had a game the next night, so I didn't want to, have them were thinking about anything other than the game. But they pried it out of me, and so I kind of knew beforehand. But yeah, when the game got over, I totally forgot about it. When Lynn hits 2 3-pointers or 2 last-second shots to beat us. That was tough on me. I was my last high school game with my buddies. We lose in that fashion, and every picture I see with me and a Mr. Basketball or Miss Basketball with Pat Smykowski and Juno Pintar has me, and I can see that I'd been crying. So but I didn't know it existed, and since then, you know, the thing shortly thereafter, I remember the day after the state tournament, we're in the Newburgh Senior Citizens building, and gets brought up, and Coach Hunksker's talking about it, and then I've got to give a little speech on it, and to this day, the speech still resonates with me, and that is that it's the whole community of Newburgh's award. It's not my award. And what I mean by that is, you know, you don't get there without the coaches. You don't get there without the teammates and the players. You don't get there without the community. And you know, it's their award. And I think both Angie and Lynette will probably say the same thing on that. And for me, though, going to college and the success that it had, that was more individual, because it was more, you had to be it was more time in the gym on your own. There wasn't always your teammates that you could lean on like you did in high school to go shoot together. I'll rebound for you, or you rebound for me. It's weight room. It's, you know, where you're by yourself. It's those types of things. So the first Mr. Basketball, it's a community award in my opinion. The whole town of Newburgh, I think, like I said, there was lots of great players before me. There was guys who averaged 30 points a game in high school. I took a little from every one of those interactions that I had with them. I had people that I looked up to in the community, just like Lynette looked up to Pat Smykowski. So that's how I look at it, I guess, Lee. It's not my award. It's the community's award.
And I think that's the perfect response for the theme of what tonight is, because it's basketball Bonds North Dakota Communities. So this is an individual honor that Chris is saying, and it's got my name on it, but it belongs to everybody. And state championships teams and that type do the same thing. I'm going to bring up the 2009 Linton Lions. I don't know if there's been a more unique basketball team in the history of North Dakota than that team that year. Because, I don't know if you remember, but most of Dan's substitutions, they might have been, I don't know if they were difficult or hard, but they might have been easy, because that was the year where most of the time he rotated the 5 starters out and the 5 reserves came in. I mean, that team had so much talent, so much depth, so much athleticism that I don't know if there's a Class A team ever that could do that. And not only, what's the word? Usually when you bring in a reserve, you're thinking that player's not as good as the starter. Well, I looked that year in the state tournament, the 3 games that year. The starters in 2009 in the state tournament scored 87 points. The reserves in the 2009 Linton Lions, they scored 126 points in those 3 games. So that was good. But all about, you know, about coaching, or Dan talked about he didn't like the 3-point line when it first came in, and now we have shot clocks. But I mean, it's about adapting and evolving. And talk a little bit about that year and how you, did you have to convince yourself that that's what you wanted to try and do with that much talent, or just get out of their way?
Hey, Dan, I don't like the 3-point line still. So we can agree on that. We're going to go old school layups, right?
Lots of putback rebounds.
Yep. Well, if I had you, I wouldn't like it yet today, but I've kind of grown fond of it, especially after you hit one against Newburgh. Anyway, that was a very unique year. It was very different. We had 5 kids that had started for us the year before, and they were all pretty good. And we had some kids in the reserve that were pretty good. And in the middle of the summer, or it might have been in June, I don't know, I was having a basketball camp, and Ross Remick came to the camp and brought his 3 boys, and he said, "I bet you didn't expect to see me here today, did you?" And I said, "No, I did not. No idea that he was going to be, no idea they were coming." And so they said, "Well, we'd like to come to play basketball in Linton." And so we talked for a long time. I took him home. We talked for a long time. I said, "I got 5 kids that started for me." I said, "They put in a lot of time." I said, "I'm not going to take that away from them." I said, it just probably, don't come. And there were 3 good ball players. And I'm thinking not a lot of people would say don't come if you got 3 good ball players come in. But in our situation, I didn't know how I was going to do it. I said, "No, I just don't come." So they called me up when they get home, and they said, "We're coming anyway." So, okay. So I said, "I can't start him." He said, "That's the biggest problem you're going to have, figuring out how not to start him." So we started playing. In the early part of the year, my son Kyle was coaching with me, and I'd send guys in. I was never a very good substituter. I mean, I usually, back in the old days too, I'd play 5 guys, and that was pretty much it. I didn't know how to substitute. So I was running guys in, and he got kind of upset with me. He said, I can't see the game. You're sending guys in all the time. I can't see the game." I said, "I don't know. Just send 5 in at a time." So we called it a line change. Instead of a line change, we called it a line change, and we just say line change, and they knew they were supposed to go. So the idea behind it was trying to keep a lot of very good athletes happy. It usually isn't my attitude towards things, but we were trying to keep a lot of good players happy. And so they bought into it. I mean, if they wouldn't have bought into it, I mean, they could have been upset, and they could have been jealous of each other and all that kind of stuff, but they didn't. The kids that came in, they were, I mean, absolutely perfect kids, great community kids, great school kids. They were involved in everything. I couldn't ask for better kids. So anyway, we started running them in and out, and they'd play for a minute and a half or 2 minutes. So the beauty of that was they knew if they didn't play hard, they were coming out. Even if they did play hard, they were coming out because we were going to rotate. So you didn't get to see us at our best, actually. So when we would play a regular season game, I mean, it was constant. We were pressing in their shorts the whole game. We played like Luton Newburgh. We never got out of their shorts, and we had a lot of different presses, and the kids were smart. They picked up on things, but we get to state tournament, and they got all those TV timeouts. They work against us. They slowed us down. We would blow people out. Just they would be huffing and puffing before the first half was over because we were just, constantly going. And it was, and then practices. I mean, they were killing each other in practice, and just because they were working so hard and playing so hard against each other. And it's a fun way to play. And you bring up the Class A. You don't say Class A. I'd really like to see all Class A teams go to that because it's just a fun way to play. You get a lot of kids involved. Bismarck High does some of that, and been successful with it. But again, it was everybody had to buy into it. They all had to be good kids. They had to give of themselves because they weren't going to play as much. They probably play half as much starters as what they normally did. But that being said, they saw what was happening. They saw that it was working well for them. They were glad for each other. They were cheering for each other on the bench, and that's what you want to see.
Well, he must have got used to all those TV timeouts because it was a 3-point win over Watford in the first one. So then you figured it out. Then you played North Sargent in the second game and won by 10. And then in the championship game, you beat Dakota Prairie by 19. So I don't think we held you back that much.
I would beg to differ.
Evolve and adapt, and he evolved and adapt. I think we're getting close to time, Laura, so I'm just going to throw it to each one of the panelists to give a final thought about anything you really want, basketball, and again, the theme is, Bonds Communities, but go ahead, Lynette, and start it just in kind of what comes to your mind.
Well, I think about how fortunate we are in North Dakota we got a lot of small towns and small communities. I say we're 1 degree of separation from people. My first teaching job was in St. Louis, Missouri. And I don't know, there's 6 or 7 class systems. And the state tournament was maybe the top 4 teams would get to state, and maybe the championship would be on TV. And I think about how great North Dakota is. I mean, we're doing right now 3 weekends of basketball, and it's quarterfinals and all the exposure and all the opportunities that our kids get and that the communities get is still awesome. I'm fortunate now to be able to do some of the state tournaments, and we were in Jamestown a couple weekends ago, and to still see the community pride. I think Benson County, Leeds, and Maddock, everybody was from the whole town was there. These 2 grandpas from Kenmare they dressed up the first day as Blues Brothers, and then they were the Dumb and Dumber, and then and they just started dressing up because their granddaughters were on the teams, and it's just cool to see the communities, and you don't get that in every state, even in Minnesota. You don't get that, so it's fun to see, and almost everybody knows somebody who's got somebody playing in the state tournament, and you maybe don't have anybody actually like you're related to, but you want to go and you want to watch. And that's what's pretty unique about North Dakota.
Angie?
Yeah, a little bit. It's funny, being from Shanley and still being a small Class A school, I had to go back in December, got to go back for a game and a recognition. And I'm like, they sit in the same spot. They sit in the second row, but now they're the parents or the players, right? It's the same, or the parents that I played are now the grandparents watching their grandkids. And so the small schools are just so passionate and prideful of where they are. I even I hope I don't cry. I really don't. But I even try to tell my own kids, sports is so much more than sports, right? And so I know we're here to talk about basketball, but I think about all the people that have come to my life all because of a little orange ball, or a volleyball or a tennis racket. Sports is so much more than that. And you talk about Missouri. Lynette and I got to see each other in Missouri when we played there in 2000 or something.
I coached at one of the high schools, and we brought our team to Columbia, Missouri, because Iowa State was playing. So we got a chance she got us tickets behind their bench. So it was really cool. And again, North Dakota girls hanging out in Missouri.
So I guess my point is it's so much more than the game of basketball, right? And I think we could all talk about and time warp back into 1984, 1998. But when I do think about the yucky morning runs or the hot, non-air conditioned Shanley gym in August. But it's not even that. It's about the people and my coaches that I've played against, or the people I thought I hated because they were opponents. I'm like, oh God, now she's nice. And so I just, when you think about basketball and beyond, I guess that's what I think of the most. I hope you don't cry.
Chris, go ahead.
That was years ago. I don't think I've cried since, but well, the word community, it's inherent for all of us, I think, to want to be part of a community. It can be volunteerism, it can be church, it can be lots of things. But growing up in Newbury, small Class B town, I think that you don't have a lot to talk about in the day, so you start it with, well, how's the basketball team going to be? For 6 months of the year, the basketball team, boys or girls, is the heartbeat of the community in the small towns. Now, I can speak to this from personal experience. I coached at Bishop Ryan, so it was a Class B school in a large town, and there's lots of things going on, lots of distractions. So the first conversation that you have, the first sentence, isn't how the basketball team is doing in Minot, for example, or large towns, I don't think. I got my son Peyton here. He won 2 state championships at Minot High. My daughter, as an 8th grader, state championship on the girls team at Minot High. And I did sit in the second row for the first part of his games, and I found I was yelling at him and the refs way too much. So I always sat in the top row. Always sat in the top row after that. But yeah, Mund High and in Minot, it's still basketball in the wintertime is very big thing. It's won a lot of state championships. But there's lots of other community things going on that distract you from it being as vibrant as it is in the small town, in my opinion. So
Can we reverse? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So I am going to give a shout out to my husband. Now he is from South Dakota, but he is a state champion.
I'm from South Dakota. What's wrong with that?
But what I think is cool, and maybe it's a small town thing, even when we pull into McIntosh, South Dakota, there is his team's name on a billboard, and it'll say 1998, right, Ryan? State championship, and it says Denver Tenbrook and Ryan Ettinger and all these kids, and that is so cool, even for his kids to come through town. So does Milnor do that? Do you guys do that? Like, maybe that is a true Class B thing, which is quite cool.
actually, my name is on a sign outside the city.
My name was not on the sign in Fargo.
They had a sign for me, and then they took it down. So I'm not sure. I don't know what I did. It's not there anymore. But Milnor boys in 2013, they won the state championship, and some of my younger relatives played on the team. And I got to watch it with my dad and be at the game, and Milnor finally won a state championship. And again, those boys are kind of idolized because they brought it home for your community.
Dan, go ahead. Final thoughts.
I guess talking about the community again, when you're at a school long enough, and a lot of Class B small town coaches do stick around a long time. Eventually, you coach the parents, and then you coach their kids, and so it's there's such a closeness. You coach neighbor kids. You go to all their graduations and weddings and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes you become related, actually. And then, but it, I always like to say, if I need something done in my car, well, one of my former students is taking care of it for me. If I go to the hospital to see a doctor, the PA was one of my former students, the nurse was one of my former students, the person who signs me in was one of my former students. If I need to go for an ambulance ride, I probably taught, a guy riding in the back, he was a former student, and I probably taught the guy driving the ambulance driver's education. So it doesn't matter where we go in a small town, we're so close. And I think that's what's special about small town basketball and Class B basketball. I thank all of you for being here tonight. We appreciate you. You're the type of great fans that we have in small town, and it's wonderful to have had the opportunity to coach in a state like North Dakota.
Thank you, Dan. I know that when he was talking about it was at a basketball tournament, one of the defining moments in my life when I realized I was getting old. It was a little bit about what you were talking. I did tournaments for a lot of years with Dan Hammer when we're sitting there back when the practice days were on Wednesdays, and you got a chance to do a bunch of interviews anyway. We were somewhere at one of the tournaments, and Ham's like, now, is that player such and such? No, they're the... And all of a sudden I looked at Dan and I go, uh-oh. And he goes, what? I says, you just defined us as being old, because not only are we learning about the kids who are playing, we know their parents. So it was a pleasure for 2.5 decades to have a front row seat to North Dakota history, and we all know that what basketball has as a passion in this state. And it's interesting when I travel around the country and they talk about North Dakota, and the first thing is, oh, it's cold. And then they think hockey. And I go, nope, North Dakota's a basketball state. I mean, hockey has its place, football's big, we all know that, but I think basketball, I still think North Dakota is a basketball state, and the reason for that is because I know there's less Class B teams than there used to be from co-ops and all of that, but it's because the community involvement around the basketball seemed to, and then the big boys be to wrap everything up before the 3 classes. So So yes, I truly am a believer that basketball does bond North Dakota communities, and I want to thank the panel, Lynette and Angie and Chris and Dan, for joining me here tonight, and a special thanks to Laura for putting it all together. Thank you very much.